Hey guys, welcome to today's stream. We are going to be interviewing one of our guest judges who's on screen for our Ultimate Online Cosplay Championship 2021. We've got a bunch of questions to ask Jasmine as well. So welcome once again, and let's go.
Oh,
Chris.
and I'm Talk.
Hi. Yeah, Chris is here as well. Let's not forget. And if we need cuteness, Severo's here as well. So that's going to be
that's if the podcast is doing extremely poorly, he will just pick up his dog and show it to everyone.
I mean, it's cheap.
He's got star power.
It works.
So to start, I think it would be appropriate if Jasmine introduced herself and said,
sure,
what do you like? What are you known for? What kinds of things have you done in the past that have got you to where you are today?
Okay, so hi. I'm CutiePie Sensei. I've been into cosplay for I'd say 7 or 8 years, but I've been actively doing it for about 6. I got started, I got introduced to it back when I was in college. I was very late onto it. I didn't know that cosplay even existed until my husband introduced me to conventions, because he was just like, you like anime and video games and stuff. Why don't you go to cons? And it's like, what's a con? And so we went, and now I'm here. I mostly do comic related costumes, occasionally video game, anime, anything else, mostly comics though. And I can sew things, and I do most of my armor out of foam and Warbler. Not fancy enough to get into molding and casting and all that kind of stuff yet, but maybe one day. And just a chick trying to figure it out as I go along. I have thankfully gotten really, really cool opportunities. I mean, shoot, even doing this via doing cosplay. So it's been cool.
Cool. So you said you got into it about 6 years ago, and I love that your husband kind of got you thinking about it. Had you ever made costumes before you started going to conventions?
Nope, was not privy. Even for Halloween, I didn't know that people made costumes. I thought people just everyone just bought them. I was unaware. And then once I went to a con, that was the moment where I was like, oh, okay, this is a thing. And I literally taught myself how to sew when I made my first costume, which was great and also a mistake, because the first costume that I needed to sew was a full spandex bodysuit. And that's kind of rough to start out with when you've never owned a sewing machine or touched one. So yeah, that was fun.
And not to steal the spotlight, but I have the identical introduction to cons, creating, and cosplay with sewing specifically that you just said. So I completely understand. But that's perfect. That was a excellent introduction, and I think you did a good job of introducing how you got into the world. And it was about 6 years ago.
Yeah.
No, you didn't ramble. It was good. So I've got a question for you now that we're kind of past the intro. Is there a costume that comes to mind for you that you would say is, let's see, the most difficult one you worked on, but in addition to that, it was also the one that you kind of learned a lot on? What costume do you think of that you've made that you kind of just made big strides in your techniques?
So it'll probably be my first serious one, which was Widowmaker from Overwatch. That was the costume where I didn't know what I was doing. So that was the whole custom spandex bodysuit, doing body paint, making props, building armor, doing work with LEDs. I hadn't done any of those things.
Yeah.
And I decided, hey, I'm going to try to do all of these things at once. And I hated making that. I'm going to be honest, I did not like the process. But now that I after I had done it, I knew how to do all those things. So it was like, oh, okay, it's not so bad now, especially if on a particular costume, I only have to do a couple of those things instead of all of them. That's definitely what taught me how to make anything, because everything I had made before that point was mostly glued together. I hand stitched a few things. Like
Right.
I did small stuff, but that was the one where it was like, I'm gonna make a big, serious.
Was that your second costume or just the first full robust with props and lights and?
So it was officially it was my third costume.
Okay.
The first costume I ever made was Cora from Legend of Korra.
Oh,
I was able to do that.
Last year, yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
series.
no, that one I love. I mostly did that though out of like bought things, and then I figured out how to dye stuff. And I hot glued a whole bunch of stuff together. And
I think your Cora was the first costume of yours that I had seen. And then I kind of and then my fiance Sammy, like I was like, man, there's this really cool Cora cosplay, and then she's just like, is it CutiePie Sensei? And I was like, yeah. And then she like runs up to me and she's just like, this is the best Captain Marvel ever, right? Like she loves your Captain Marvel, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I also love my Captain Marvel.
It's such a good costume.
I was mad about it because that was a situation where Marvel was like, hey, we have all three of y'all making your own suits, and we need you all to use the same materials. And
really,
at the time,
like they told you how to do it or like what to
do. They knew we were going to be tongue tied. We were going to be in the same episode. So they were like,
right,
y'all are all going to be, since there's going to be three of you together. Yeah, it was from Marvel Becoming. So it was like, hey, since you're all going to be together, we need you to kind of like look the same. So it was Pitchfork Cosplay and Sharon Rose Cosplay. And they were familiar with using leather. So they were like, yeah, let's make the whole thing out of leather. That's legit. And I'm like, cool. I've never done that, but full, really complicated superhero like
Into
costume. They want us to make all the seams and stuff the exact same. All right, no creative liberties. No, okay. And I had to do that, make a whole leather suit.
What was the timeline of where this fit into how long you've been building? Because you were in like a documentary about Marvel cosplayers.
So that was after, but Marvel Becoming, that was at the beginning of 2018.
Okay, so you've been around for 3 years or so, roughly.
Or 2019, sorry. 2019.
Okay.
Beginning of 2019.
So you're pretty established at this point. Okay.
I knew how to make things. Yeah, I knew how to do stuff. It was just like, oh, this material specifically, I've never worked with. And I was never the type of person to try to make something screen accurate.
Right.
That just wasn't, I like being creative and making changes along the way. But I was like, all right, new challenge. So.
Right.
Cool.
Well, I know for me with my work, I do a lot of work with game companies, and the fact that the things that we're making exists in a game environment, there's so much interpretation. So what's weird for me is when you've got companies that are like, it has to be accurate, but it's like, but that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Right.
No, especially for games, there's a lot of just creative liberties taken. I know me personally though, because like I work in games. So when I'm designing characters and stuff, my boss, our art director, even said, it's like, hey, it's really cool that you work on cosplays because I can tell when you're making things, you try to make it make sense. Like you put scenes in places that we don't really think about. Yeah, because I'm just like, you have to close, their thing. Yeah, right. So you have to construct things a certain way. So I can do that.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. What is it that you actually do for a living outside of cosplay?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that.
Yeah. So
if you're allowed, as much as you're allowed to talk about it.
I can talk a bunch about it. So contrary to popular belief, I don't make costumes all the time. During the day, I work for a game called Paladins. I'm a concept artist for them, so I design characters and skins and different assets that go in game. So mostly doing skins, honestly, and weapons. So literally my job is to think of cool things to put in the game and then draw it so people can make it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So looking at your social media, do you share a lot of, like, that's probably a lot of NDA stuff, so you can't share it, but do you share a lot of your own private concept art that you do on the side? with your community?
So I just started posting art to an alternate page, CutiePie Kohai. I normally don't share a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, I thought Kohai made sense because
it does.
Sensei.
Yeah, kind of.
So I don't share a whole lot of stuff, mainly because outside of work, I'm usually doing cosplay. So
I'm posting that in chat, by the way.
Oh, thank you. So I usually don't have a lot of time to do personal stuff. I recently started having time, and I do have an art station. It's also CutiePie Sensei, and I have like actual stuff from my job on there. But yeah, it's hard to balance being like an artist online and social media and stuff, because for a lot of people that's like the only thing they do, so they focus on that.
Right.
And it's like having a cosplay like personality too, and work, and that like it's a lot, and if I did both equally, I wouldn't have time for my husband. So
yep.
I'm looking at him right now, by the way. He looks like quite the rock star. He seems like a cool dude.
No, he's great. Like he's one of those people where I'm almost jealous, because he's one of those people where anyone who meets him automatically likes him, because he's just a really great person. And I wish
talk is.
It's just like I don't have that in me, but no, he's amazing. But cool. Yeah, I like spending time with him too, so I have to make time somewhere.
It's a good sign when a husband and wife enjoy spending time together. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
But
and here's him in cosplay as Super Mario.
I forced it.
He does not seem happy about it. Then again, he's getting licked on the face.
I have to look at this page. I was trying to resist, but I have to.
No. Why?
So to be fair, there's two ways to interpret that, right? So he hated that. It was for the picture. He hated it.
Getting licked on the face or cosplaying?
No, well, slightly both, but mostly getting licked on the face.
Fair.
Whereas like other people are like, oh man, that's so hot, so great. And I'm just like, he hated that. Yeah, it's just
the look on his face
gross.
says that he's not having a good time. I know it's probably for the picture, but yeah.
He's literally looking at the camera thinking, what have I done?
Right. Yep. What did I get myself into? But it's I love that he's supported, because I know a lot of couples where one person is a cosplayer and the other isn't. But it's so like just wonderful to see the support from, the counterpart, so to speak.
I mean, it's his fault, so he kind of has to be.
He started it.
Yeah.
Cool. So
well, I've got something else I want to say as well though now. So what's so cool about you being a concept artist and specifically a character artist, a friend of mine, Zach Fisher, who's also an honorary judge as a part of our competition, he designs character art and he does concept art, right? And there's something that I've actually seen, especially now that you tell me that you do this, that I recognize a lot with character artists that also do cosplay, and that's that there's a tendency for the costumes and the characters to be more fleshed out. You don't just think about like the main kind of attributes or the main core armor components. You're thinking about how it all works together and making sure that there's not these big holes in the costume that are disruptive. What do they call it? The suspension of disbelief.
Mm-hmm.
That's something when I'm judging, it's actually really important to me. I want to start at the top with a silhouette, right? And I want to make sure that silhouette doesn't throw me off. And then as they get closer, if they've kind of checked that box of having good profile, then I start looking at more of the details. But you'll understand this. The moment you've got a costume with like incredible amounts of details, but the form is completely off, throws the whole costume off. And so I think this is just another perfect example where people who have developed their actual art skills in a wide way, in all sorts of different ways, how it really all kind of comes together, and it really does help you with no matter what you do. So it's really cool. I think that's why I like your costumes as much as I do, is because they're so immersive, It's really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a symbiotic relationship between, my like actual art and my costume building for sure. I think both kind of help each other, and I've kind of grown my skills in both at the same time together. Right. So I agree. When I'm looking at pretty much anything, and when I want to build it and it's a good and a bad thing depending on how you look at it. I am one of those people that I like to make changes if I see something that's just, you know, it's like, yeah, this is accurate, but it's not, it doesn't work well like in person.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I tend to do stuff like that because I am concerned about like the overall whole final look, and how, like you said, and how things work together. Because I think some people, if you're too focused on making every single part just like, oh, super detailed, it's not, that's not how people see it. People aren't, unless, I guess if you're getting judged in a competition sometimes, then people are looking like every single detail, but also people are looking at the overall like picture. So you need to make sure it works like as a whole too.
That's an excellent, and I was, as you were speaking, I was thinking, because every artist is critical of themselves and almost judges themselves while you're making something and completing it, making sure the overall composition looks a certain way to, you know, capture the accuracy of a character. But as a judge in this event that we're hosting, I wanted you to talk a little bit about what you believe your specialty of expertise is and what you're going to be looking for and how you're going to be judging people's costumes. Because one of the big purposes of this show is to, of course, introduce all of the judges, but tell the audience, the people who are planning on submitting and competing, what is each of our judges, you know, particularly, you know, excellent at, and what are they going to be looking for from the judges?
Well,
so
not just that, what sort of characteristics or traits kind of resonate with you? You know, for example, all of our judges get their own, you know, honorable mention where you can give your own Judge's Choice Award away. I know for me, last year, I ended up picking Perler Tricks, who had a post-apocalyptic Woody. And the reason that I loved that costume so much was because of that suspension of disbelief. It was so immersive.
He had the cart, right?
He did. He had the buggy. He had the RC, and it was just like, and he had like, he even made like little pictures that he put on the dashboard and stuff.
It was all cell shaded. I mean, just top to bottom, the detail from everything was phenomenal.
It was. That's so hyper fixating on details, but doing it in a really kind of subtle, nuanced way is really fun for me. I love it when people line their armor and don't even tell anyone about it. That's what I do, by the way. So like any costume I've ever made, there's so many secrets in it where it's just like the only person that knows that I went and did something extra stupid, ridiculous on it is me. And so, yeah, so I guess we're curious kind of where do you fall in that realm?
That's hard. Because I look at a lot of different traits. Like I have my own, like, you know, obviously check off list as I go. So obviously first is initial impact, initial feeling. Quite frankly, and you know, we all go into details and stuff and look at what skills they used and all that. But first thing is just like the feeling you get when you see it. There's some costumes where you just look at and you're like, oh, wow. Off, like before you even get into it, you just know. So there's that. But also I look at the variety of skills they use. So I really respect when people are able to do like multiple different things versus like, if it's all sewing or all armor, that kind of thing. If you use a lot of different skills within that, I really appreciate it. I personally am not necessarily a person who, like, if the character looks like this and you're over here, if you got every single tiny detail, it'd be exactly the same. That's not necessarily something I look for. I look for someone to make the costume work well for them. Yeah. Because like a lot of times the characters that we're referencing and stuff have very specific body types and structure and look a certain way. And we as normal humans don't necessarily look like that.
Right.
So I really appreciate it when someone's like, hey, this character looks like this. I don't exactly look like that. So what I did was I made this adjustment. So like it feels the same, but it looks like better on me and like my particular body type. And I felt more comfortable like with it like this, but it still looks like right. You know what I mean? So if someone has the wherewithal to be able to make conscious decisions like that and have it make sense and still look really good and still be detailed, I like give them extra points in my mind, because that's something that I don't think initially, like when you first start, you necessarily have the instinct to do that. So
it sounds to me like you are very much appreciative of people that are what's the word for this one? People that are very subtle, but considerate. You know what I mean? Like people that can be considerate with their choices, and I respect the hell out of people when they're able to do that. Sometimes it's not possible, obviously, but
yeah,
man, when somebody who can just make something that's really polished and be really considerate about their choices, it shows off so much, versus when you've got individuals that are just, it's almost like they're rolling in glitter and just, you know, going crazy with the little fixtures and all that. And you're like,
yeah, it's too much. Like there is a such thing as like doing too much. And I feel like it's just a certain instinct you have to be able to know like where to go all out, and you know, just certain choices you have to make in terms of like how you approach certain things to make it look right, especially in real life.
Awesome.
A lot of our finalists last year ended up being people who did, you know, of course there was some wild, you know, composition cosplays people submitted, but a lot of our finalists were people that did something otherwise fairly simple, but just flawlessly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so we actually have one of our journeyman winners. Did you catch the competition last year by chance?
I didn't see the competition, but I've seen like the video and stuff of it since, like afterwards. I have seen a lot of the
so you're aware that we ran into a big issue last year, and that was that our costumes being entered were too good.
we didn't expect that
costumes. So like for example, the costume that is on screen right now was one of our journeyman winners. I think it was second place journeyman.
Yeah, that was our second place
intermediate. It's really good.
And she's from Italy. That's 90 cosplay from Italy, and she won second place for intermediate. And
I hope she enters again this year.
I do too. But people are going to be terrified of her.
I want to finish. So this is something that drove us this year to change our categories, and that's why we've now got the 3 categories: needlework, armor work, as well as out of this world. The out of this world is kind of that cross-disciplinary category, and then of course the other ones are the very specific defined categories. And so I just it's something I think was important to mention, is this year we changed things around to accommodate just the skill level of how many costumes we had entered. But yeah, all right, Chris, where are we going next, buddy?
I was going to ask, have you ever competed before in a competition?
Yes, a couple of times, but I've judged way more than I've competed.
Okay.
Because a lot of people who enter, y'all are braver than I am.
I would say the same. In fact,
getting broken down by a panel of people, that's scary.
It is. It's a very gut-wrenching experience, and that actually extends to not just the competitors, but their handlers and the coordinators, the judges. Judges a lot of times do not have a lot of fun because it's so hard to select among a list of absolutely beautiful costumes. Then there's the coordinators. Like it's a challenge for everyone, and there's a level of anxiety that everyone feels. A lot of that falls on the competitors, obviously. But like last year, during deliberations between the judges, which you will experience this year with us, there will be some, we'll just say heated deliberations. We won't say arguments, because none of us argued, because we're all friends. But
there's nothing wrong with arguing. Not really.
There are, but
as long as it's like acceptable levels.
Just starting in the first part, how was your experience as a competitor, or if you got in as a finalist? Like what was that like for you when you were new?
So for me, there's a reason why I don't personally compete myself super often, and I think it's because the amount of time that people put into cosplay, specifically that they plan to enter into competitions, is like insane, because obviously that's a situation where you want to make sure every single like detail that you are spending time on is absolutely accurate, up close, far away, all that kind of stuff. And that level of stress was not the most fun for me. Getting something competition ready. And then also, this is small and mostly for conventions more so than, now we're doing this online. But prior to this, for conventions, being in a competition took like all day.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah. It's usually a 9 to 11 hour.
yeah,
day.
because you got to get there for judging, and they have to stand around, and then you have to line up early to go on stage and stuff. And I was like, I want to enjoy the con, and I didn't want to spend so much time in just the competition stuff. So it was fine. Honestly, my favorite part was actually just being at the judges table, like being judged, because then you can actually geek out about your costume and talk about it. And it's like, oh yeah, I did this, this, and this. Right. And you might not notice this from like looking at it like from there, but I actually had to think about doing this, and you can explain like what was your first time and all that kind of stuff. So that was fun. Yeah. I didn't like everything else. But I guess a lot of that's taken out though when you're in a situation like what we're doing, and it's, an online submission type of thing. You take a lot of the stuff I didn't like out of it. So
and Hoku and I don't know if we should go into that, because that's not really the focus of this particular show, because you're our honored guest on this podcast. But maybe Hoku and I will cover that in another episode about what the benefits of what we're able to do in the online format. And one of those things is having a panel of 16 judges, which you could otherwise never do in person.
No.
So that's really special that we get to be able to include such a wide scope of skilled artists from around the world to be part of what we're doing together. So in your transition between, so like I've competed several times. I don't enjoy it. My first experience competing was when Hoku beat the shit out of me. Forgive my language, but he shattered the competition and won first place that year. And then him and I became very good friends. So,
well, we were friends kind of before that.
We were friends through Twitch, but we hadn't met in person.
Yeah.
But I fell in love with you when I met you, and I was so happy when you won. But so for Jasmine,
that was weird.
After you kind of discovered your experience in competing, what got you into judging, and do you enjoy that more, less? What kind of elements do you truly enjoy in that kind of environment?
So yeah, I definitely like it more. One, because I get to obviously see like so many really, really amazing costumes, and
I agree.
Like I said, most of the time it's in person, so I also get to like talk to the cosplayer and then hear them geek out over what they did, and it's like, oh, like I love this part. This is so neat. Whereas like all the stress to do all that stuff is on myself. It's like, nah, I don't want that stress. But hearing you talk about stuff and seeing all these detailed costumes and stuff, it's really cool. I didn't like intentionally ever get into judging. It was one of those things where I had a con reach out and they were like, hey, would you like to do it? And I was like, yes. And then I went and realized I really like this. Cool. And from there, obviously, once you start working with people and more people know you, then more opportunities come. And I usually said yes, because I really enjoy the process.
Well, so I want to talk about judges as a whole in that situation, and in that regard, really. And that is, you are a perfect example of a judge who you've gained the respect of the community, and through that, and through your different capabilities and skill sets, people admire you. They want you to actually see their costumes. That's some of what we really wanted to provide an opportunity for with our contest. That's why we have so many judges, is a lot of us look up to other people. And so one of the most exciting parts, I agree with you, by the way, when you're in a competition, I'm kind of the mind, it's you go in for prejudging and you have 5 minutes to go on about all the things you love. And that's what I kind of suggest to people, which let me put a pin in asking this. We want to ask you later on, after I'm done rambling, what kind of suggestion, if you had one suggestion for the competitors, what that would be. But yeah, so getting back to it, I enjoyed the process a ton of being able to go through and be like, hey, look how I did this, look how I did that, blah 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 blah. And I tell people, do that, go through and just take 5 minutes and tell the judges everything you love about your costume. Because if you walk in and you go, I really wish I could have done this, you're like, damn it, I really wish I didn't have to judge you for the thing that I didn't see before.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, give me a chance, help me help you. And that's what it really comes down to. A lot of people need to realize you can have the best costume in the world, and if you are abysmal at actually prejudging, you're probably not going to win.
Yeah.
And that's because prejudging is a major facet of competition. Okay.
Right.
Fast forward.
And actually, going back to, you were talking a little bit about the format, Jasmine, and this hasn't been announced to the public yet, but there is a very strict format and point totaling system for all of us judges that we will be able to, it's very clearly outlined so that a lot of the things you mentioned, like that initial presentation, you're going to be able to include that in your point value. Then you're going to look at fine detail and craftsmanship, difficulty of techniques. Again, all this will be made available to the public so that the people who are submitting will be able to know what we are all
transparency.
Looking for. Yeah, so we want to be, this is a community-run event, obviously, and we want to be as just open and forthcoming with everything as possible. So it's going to be interesting to see how people adapt to what we're looking for. And it's really no different than any other in-person con. The difference is, instead of you having 5 minutes to look at and deliberate with your co-judges, we'll have more like 2 or 3 days to look at everyone's stuff, do it on your own time, look in person and see what you like and do your point values. And then we'll all come back together and share our notes.
Well, what's really cool too is being able to go back and look at stuff too, because the one thing that makes it rough judging in person is that you'll see someone and then maybe like an hour later in the judging, after you've seen a whole bunch of other people, you want to go back and it's like, oh, what was that one card? But no, they're gone now.
Right.
So all I have is my notes and my memory to go on.
Yep.
So that part's rough. So I do personally really like the online format and having people able to send stuff in and reference things and all that. It's gonna be really cool.
Yeah. Plus, it doesn't waste the convention.
Yes, that too.
I mean, that to me is one of the biggest perks of running the contest online, is the fact that you're not burning a day or two of your convention.
Yeah, because I like I know me, I go to cons to enjoy the con and being with my people, and obviously a photo shoot scheduled and hanging out in the dealer room and going to panels, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, great, there's these panels I want to go to, but for these 4 hours, I can't do anything. So,
right. So
agree.
This will be a lot easier on all of us in terms of, do it at your own pace and absorb things as you need to. And there'll be a lot more content where people have to submit at least a 2-minute long video and a bunch of pictures and work in progress so you can see their techniques unfold, which you otherwise can't see at an in-person con. And so I'm really excited that for those of you watching that don't know this, last year we had our committee of judges, and Jasmine here is a new addition to this year's judging lineup. And I think you're going to bring a tremendous amount of value to our overall coverage of techniques, skills, because you do a lot of needlework stuff, but you're also familiar with electronics and, prop making and pattern making. And it's so great to have someone like Chad who's so experienced with very just overdeveloped prop making, and he does a lot.
I wish I could do it. I can't. I'm not that level of good yet.
but you do things that I think Chad would agree that he's not particularly familiar with.
Oh yeah.
Yet at the same time, his fiance Sammy is also part of Hoku Props. She is familiar with that, so it's just so great to have that kind of coverage, that kind of creative coverage as a judging pool. So thank you again. I'm not saying goodbye or anything. I'm just saying you're a huge asset.
Get out.
To,
no,
it's all right, leave.
This whole thing.
Well, let's ask our question now. Do you have a piece of advice or a word of advice for the competitors when it comes to their prejudging video?
Yeah, you kind of touched it already, but it is about, you know, talking about what you love about the costume. Because when you're passionate about it, it's easy for me to see your passion and me get excited because it's like it's mutual shared excitement. And then also, I like it when people share something that we might not personally know about their costume just by looking at it. So a lot of times people might build something and it's the first time they've ever tried doing something. It's their first approach to a technique. And maybe they're like super happy with how it came out. I like knowing when it's you trying a new skill, especially for a competition. Because to me, I'm just like, oh man, you're going like the extra mile to figure out something and go out of your comfort zone to achieve it.
Yourself.
So yeah. So definitely, you know, say when you've, you know, tried really hard to learn a particular technique that really helps me.
Yeah,
cool.
I completely agree with that. Chris, do you have a question?
Okay, so
or rather, should I ask? Pick one of your questions. I'm sure you've got a million.
I always have questions for everyone, whether they're a judge or not, just because I truly love getting to know people. But something I was going to mention is this would be our halfway point in the podcast. So if anyone needs to get a refill of their drink or use the restroom, now would be a good time.
Well, let's just call it a 2-minute break. Take 2. And I'm just gonna chat with people in the chat. Hi, Bjorn's
so
Workshop.
we'll take a moment to answer questions in chat. I'm gonna make another cup of coffee because I'm an addict. So yeah, you guys just hang out with chat. I'll be back in a couple of minutes, and then when we come back, I'd like to ask some more, not too intrusive, but personal questions about you, who you are, why you are the way you are.
Okay.
As you know, because people love to hear about your cosplay experience, how you got into it, what you're looking for as a judge, but they also want to feel some kind of a personal connection with each of us. And this is our opportunity to humanize all of the judges and let us know that we are real people. So those are the kind of things that I'd like to talk a little bit about, and I would love for people in chat to put up questions that they would like answers to, specifically from Jasmine. So think about that for a moment, and I'm going to get some more coffee. Thank you all for being here, and I'll be right back.
Yeah, y'all need to put like the extra Jeopardy music.
I know. There's so many like campy humor things we could do with this, but you know, Chris and I both tend to just be idiots naturally, and it's fun, so most people just get a kick out of the madness. But yeah, I don't know, thanks again for being on this, by the way.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I love being able to like just, especially with like-minded people when it comes to cosplay and stuff, just being able to like chill out, talk about stuff. So
I know it's fun. Is there a maybe I shouldn't, I'm just gonna ask random questions. Is there a convention that, like, what's your favorite convention?
So mine is Dragon Con. I know we were talking about that before we went live. I really like Dragon Con a lot, which is why I'm I hope this year gets better. I don't know, we'll see. I would hate to have to miss it, but yeah, I love Dragon Con. That's the one where I intentionally like make a specific, whether it's difficult, whether it's super timely, like I always try to go all out for my cosplays for that specific con, because it is a cosplay convention and I love it.
For me, there's like 2 kind of cons. There's the ones that I go to for work, and then the ones that I actually go to as a convention attendee, and Dragon Con would be one of them. BlizzCon, it's kind of in the middle. I've worked BlizzCon, but I've also just attended as a fan. And then the other one, though, that really stands out, like there's one convention that Sammy and I really love. And if you are looking for a convention in your neck of the woods, actually, Holiday Matsuri out in Florida.
Yeah, people keep telling me to go to Hall Mat, and I still have not had the chance to go, but I've heard nothing but good things about it.
Yeah.
Are you con-shaming people right now, Hoku?
No,
but opposite.
Talking about cons we love. Cons that we go to for a con, not just for work.
Yeah.
You got your coffee? You ready to go, bud?
I did. What did I miss?
Oh, I was just asking what her favorite convention was.
Oh, we should put that in the actual thing. So,
Well, you're gonna have to cut out the intermission anyway, so we can
right.
always
Okay.
just.
So we are going to resume our official podcast starting.
Well, let's see if there's any
Oh,
questions.
do we have
specific.
questions?
Does anyone remember
I
Actually,
think Sweet Potato Gaming had one early on. I
that? See,
think.
sweet potato.
you know, we'll include all of this in the actual show. So as of right now, we're back in action. So
Yeah.
looking at questions from chat, Jasmine, go ahead if you saw one.
Oh God, well, shoot, I gotta scroll back. I think the question was, I lost it. Oh, what is the hardest part about getting into cosplay for the first time?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I saw that. Um, For me, what was difficult starting out, and this is very specific, I think, to me being a Black woman. I felt like there weren't a lot of characters that I would look good as, because, just in media, representation is, people are trying, it's getting better, but it's not necessarily the greatest.
It's not what it should be.
Yeah, and so for me, it was difficult crossing that line of like, hey, do I cosplay outside of my race or no? So that was one of the reasons actually why Cora was my first costume, because I was like, okay, she's a brown girl. I'm a brown girl, so like I'll look right. And that was a mental thing I had to kind of get over, because people online can be mean and stuff, and I had to kind of push past that. But once, now keep in mind, once I pushed past that and people were pretty positive, because this was when I was a lot smaller, so as many trolls couldn't see me. So sure. People were really nice and stuff, and from there I got more confident, and now I can do whatever. But for me, cosplaying was that was the hardest part for me, was kind of getting over the way I felt like I would look like as certain characters.
That's a great answer. I wasn't expecting to hear that, but I'm really glad that you drew attention to something that's extremely important, not just, socially across the world, but specifically in cosplay. That's such a over dissected topic, and I think what you do with all of the costumes that you make show a lot of respect for the characters that you're doing, because you love the characters and you want to bring them to life.
Right, and that's what it's ultimately about, I think. And I'll recommend this for anyone, because like outside of just race, I know like a lot of people who, and I slightly mentioned this earlier too, you might not be shaped like the character that you're trying to cosplay, all that kind of stuff.
You don't have two eyes.
Yeah,
that's actually, I was thinking when you were talking about your choice to make Cora and the troubles that you faced with that. I find myself, even to this day, I'm naturally oriented towards picking characters that have lost an eye, ironically enough, because it's easier for me to accomplish that. It doesn't really disrupt the costume by me missing the eye.
Yeah.
And so it allows me to do some things that are unique, but whether it's disabilities or the color of your skin, race, ethnicity, culture, like so many of these things that tend to get in the way of people making the costumes. There's respectful ways to do most costumes, and then there's ways that are of course not respectful.
Well, yes.
Right. I think we can all agree on that.
I think that's what it really comes down to, is just thoughtfulness and consideration. That can be the judge for you, morally speaking, when not a costume is a good choice.
Right.
I think.
So was that kind of an obstacle of courage for you, or was it an obstacle of, are people going to absolutely shred me online if I choose to do this and post this or show up at a con wearing this? I mean, was that like a crippling feeling for you, or did you just do it because you wanted to do it?
So it's a little bit of both. Like I definitely, from the start, there were characters that I wanted to do, and it was purely a situation where it was like, will people like talk bad about me or say I look crazy or something, because I decided to do this. And for me, it was just a matter of like, look, I'm tired of limiting myself. I really want to make this specific costume, so I'm gonna just do it.
Cool.
So Supergirl was the first one I made where I went outside of my race or whatever, and it was a situation where like I just really wanted to make a Supergirl costume. There wasn't really any like specific, thing. I just really wanted to make it, and so I was like, guess I'm doing it. And from there, that was kind of the hump I crossed, and then once I crossed that,
how was the worldwide reaction and response to that particular
it was mostly positive. It was mostly positive. That was actually the cosplay that started getting me followers on my Instagram.
Okay.
I posted a work in progress and people really responded well. So overall, people were nice. I did have to deal with some people being a little annoying because they were like, oh, why are you wearing blonde hair? You should have your natural hair. And I'm like, you don't know what my natural hair looks like, and the character is blonde. So
I feel like I'm from Krypton. Fuck you. Sorry.
It was like just like, I mean,
I'm an
like,
alien. Yeah.
but also like, fuck you. Like, you're not the person who is making the costume. Like, are you about to come here and
me.
Yeah, gatekeepers are
Well,
and most of the time it's people who aren't even making cosplays. Like it's usually people who don't know how to cosplay anyway.
It's the same principle behind people that do like restaurant reviews on Yelp or something, where they don't know anything about cooking or running a restaurant. Yet some of these people that criticize or critique restaurants or certain businesses do the same thing to cosplayers, where it's people that that really have no prior experience or competitive knowledge or what it's like to be a judge or what it's like to be a content creator. And those are some of the loudest voices because they're some of the most negative voices. And it's really unjust and unfair. But you have to also be able to respond in a professional and mature manner that's not going to ultimately destroy your reputation.
I mean, I do most of the time. Most of the time I just block them. And then occasionally someone will catch you on a bad day and you're just like...
Okay, so this brings us to a great example.
Unload.
So recently you were brought into a very funny, controversial thing about a particular Star Wars costume that you chose to share. And I wanted to give you a moment to explain that because I think this is hilarious. So are you willing to share that particular experience?
Yeah, it's fine. It's really stupid. And I made the mistake. Of like finishing my Ahsoka Tano cosplay from Star Wars. I finished that one literally 2 weeks after the Mandalorian episode where she appeared came out, even though I started on the costume back in May of last year before I knew she was going to be in the Mandalorian. But for some reason now, everyone thinks that I did it because of the Mandalorian. So one, you got the people who are like, oh, you're just doing this because it's popular now and you're just, riding a wave. And it's like, no, I got into Star Wars earlier, like very beginning of 2020, and all right, fine. And then you have the people who are like, hey, this is cool, but your lightsabers are the wrong color because I specifically did the season 7 Siege of Mandalore version of Ahsoka where she's in a blue outfit and she has blue lightsabers. I don't want to spoil the reason why she has blue lightsabers for anyone who is in chat who hasn't seen the final season, because I get that Clone Wars came out very like spaced out and weird. So a lot of people haven't seen the final season, but final season, blue lightsabers, they're there. And
I have to also add, as a Star Wars nerd, there's also no reason why a Jedi can't use different lightsabers.
Right.
I mean, that too.
Samuel L. Jackson had a purple lightsaber.
Well, Luke, for some reason in the movies, goes from having a blue to a green crystal.
Yeah.
So why does it matter?
Yeah, no, but people feel like big, I guess, when they correct someone. So there's plenty of people who came in my comments and stuff and are like, actually, they are white, or some people who are like, actually, you're doing younger Ahsoka, so they're green. And it's like, no, you haven't seen season 7. They are not green for this specific costume. I know because I watched it. And
right.
People kept feeling the need to correct me to the point where I like, there was a situation where someone was like, no, they're white. I was like, Google Ahsoka season 7 and you will see blue lightsabers. There's articles and stuff about it. And I also made a video about why I don't have white lightsabers. You can totally check that out. They were like, no, you're wrong. They're white. And I'm just like, so you just didn't.
So this is
try. This is easy to find information.
I don't want to go too deep into the psychology of people that feel the absolute need to correct or point certain things out, but
was green.
Yeah. He's got a lightsaber tattooed on his finger. If it was awesome. Blurry, but
no, it's not. It's stupid.
I don't understand the psychology of people that do that, and personally, I believe it's just people that ultimately want your attention or people who they look up to's attention, and if their only method of getting that is to be negative or showcase things to prove you wrong or make you look foolish and get this kind of reaction that gets you to respond, that's all they're looking for. And that's really sad for you as an artist, for the community of cosplayers, for the reference in which you're, creating, and for the person who is trying to get an otherwise just reactive response from you. So, and that's something that, like, there's no lesson or school or book on how to learn that stuff. We all learn that as we grow, of why people do what they do, how to respond professionally. And sometimes we're in a bad fucking mood and we, might otherwise handle it differently if we're having a good day. So,
I mean, I mostly try to block people at this point, honestly. If they start getting too rowdy, because it's just not worth
the trolls.
It's not. It's mostly not worth my time. And then occasionally, I'm like, I have time, but most of the time, I try to block people. It's just frustrating because it's a situation where cosplay is supposed to be fun. At the end of the day, y'all are the ones here spending time making something, spending the money because it can get expensive, spending the money for materials and things, all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, this is my hobby. I'm doing it the way I want to. Yeah. So it's really not up to you to decide like how or like what's right or what's wrong about my costume. Especially, again, this tends to come from non-cosplayers. So it's especially like, hey, you don't know the first thing about doing this. If you had to do the same thing I'm doing, you wouldn't be able to.
Right.
So
well, it's cosplay at a convention is kind of the icing on the cake. It's something to appreciate the initiative on other people's parts, because the convention's not paying for people to walk around in costumes. You think about it, you go to Disney World, Disneyland, every single character actor you see walking around is an actor who's being paid to do their job. And instead what you've got is people that are so just passionate and they've got such a passion for the hobby as well, not just the game or the show, that they are putting so much more of themselves into it. They are really giving. And cosplayers deserve appreciation for one thing, and that's the fact that they are giving you extra for nothing. And I find it irreprehensible when you've got individuals such as the people that were kind of like tearing into you, that spend so much time trying to bring you down. And the reason they're doing that is because they just want you to be down where they're at. And instead, if you, and this goes for everyone, if you learn how to appreciate the things around you and the things that other people are doing, it can actually help elevate and bring you up. And so I think we've got such a terrible situation at times where people are toxic. And that's the one thing that I know Chris and I are determined with this costume contest is there's zero tolerance for toxic behavior. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're a judge. It doesn't. If it's me, I'm gone. If it's Chris, he's gone. And that's just
if I'm an asshole, I will cut myself from the show. That's how strict we are in that rule.
Yeah, and it's. I want to make sure that people realize though is it's not us trying to censor or anything like that. It's literally do not bring negative feelings into our community because we will get rid of you. because you don't belong here.
Right.
Well, I find
know.
though that like the cosplay community in general, when it is just cosplayers, tends to be extremely positive and
Oh
uplifting.
yeah.
Like
Absolutely.
any group that I'm
Oh
in
yeah.
that's cosplay and crafting focused, people are super nice and helpful, and there's just advice being thrown left and right, and people will completely big you up if you post something and you're just like, hey, I wasn't really feeling this, but like I tried making this thing. People are like, no, it looks great, you're awesome. Like people tend to be nice once they understand, but
Right.
it's the people who come from outside of the community, I think, because cosplay, especially now that it's becoming more, I don't want to say mainstream, but more people are getting exposed to it, I think,
Oh
than
yeah, the
they have
culture
in
is
past
growing
years.
so rapidly.
Well,
Yeah,
nerd culture as a whole has become acceptable. Like
exactly.
I was sorry to deviate off
Yeah.
topic. This is what I do. I was so excited the other day when I was talking to Sammy, and I was like, man, I hope Parker, my nephew, doesn't have to deal with some of the crap that I did growing up because I was a nerd. And then I was like, but Sammy, nerds are actually acceptable and kind of cool now. So he's got a chance. And I was actually really excited about that he might not have to go through the same struggles that some of us had to go through growing up because we were weird. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's super mainstream now. It's just the only downside to it being mainstream is that like since you have all the normies coming in and seeing
Sure.
your stuff, you're like they're super critical, and it's
Right.
like,
And
hey,
that's the toxic crap that we're not okay with.
yeah,
Right.
it's like I'm not a giant, production team on a movie set.
Well, and
I'm sorry that I'm not.
for
I'm
those of
just a
you who missed
person.
the beginning of this podcast, Jasmine talked about the fact that this is not her full-time job. She's not a full-time cosplayer. She does this because she enjoys it. She's competed, she's judged, but she's a full-time character artist for a video game company. And for someone like you in your position to just ultimately share what you love and to be criticized so heavily in certain episodes, not all the time, obviously,
Yeah,
but when
yeah.
it happens, it's got to put something through your mind, thinking like, this is bullshit, like. And forgive me for being that direct, but there has to be an element of that, and
Yeah. People and just people don't know, and if anything, it gets worse because like I have done some obviously professional gigs and stuff. Like I think I forgot what years 2019. I did like the thing for Riot. I did their Cinna released stuff. I
Oh, fun.
did the
right,
cosplay for that, and once you start getting professional opportunities, people are like, oh, you get these opportunities, you're a professional, and I'm like, I still am a hobbyist.
or you're
I
still just a
still just
person,
yeah, I'm just this one individual who's like, I'm doing it for fun. Occasionally I get paid to do certain things, but I'm still learning and growing, and I am by myself in terms of making stuff. Um,
I would say from my point of view, I totally think you're a professional. It's just not your profession.
I guess
That's really what it
I
yeah,
comes
never
down to.
considered myself like a
Yeah.
super professional, only because like I'm in this place where I feel like I have so much to learn, and there's still so many things I don't know how to do. I tell people all the time when I'm making stuff, I'm just figuring it out.
right,
I don't know what I'm doing
But
most of the time.
let's
I'm just
dissect
guessing.
this. Let's dissect this though. Like I could say the exact same thing about artwork and drawing. Like there's
right,
always more that you can learn, and you can always get these new techniques and skills, but that is your profession. And
Yeah.
so just know, as far as I'm concerned, I view you as being a professional in the
Oh.
cosplay world,
Well, I
and
guess so. What do you
specifically the
define?
costuming world.
So, how do you overall define a professional cosplayer? This is a good question because
Yeah.
I've had people say it's like, oh, such and such professional cosplayers. Like, so what is a professional cosplayer?
See, I wouldn't go down that route. I would say you're a professional costumer. That's really what it is.
That's a good way to define it, I
right,
think, because yeah, there's a
Cosplay is different
difference.
to everyone. We made
Yeah.
intermission videos
right.
last year, which was what is cosplay to you, and it's completely different to every single person. I don't consider myself a professional
It is, yeah,
cosplayer. I consider myself a prop maker, but I
Yeah.
do cosplay. It's a main portion of my marketing, really. But what it really comes down to is, for me, it has a lot to do with, well, so here you go. Professionals The only thing that really differentiates an amateur from a professional is the professional has, no offense, fucked up more. They've learned how to not repeat the same mistakes. There's kind of a point in time where you are able to go through and assess how you're going to build something and do it in a manner which you're not going to be repeating a bunch of those same mistakes. There's probably, when it comes to sewing, you can kind of like go, okay, I know how I'm going to do this. You might have a couple hiccups along the way, but you have now the competency to go through and execute your capabilities. That to me is a professional. You know what I mean? That to me is really indicative of somebody. It's when you've got a vision in your head that you can execute and accomplish that in a reasonable amount of time. Now, if a costume took you 2+ years, every single one, then you're probably still falling an amateur. But I don't think that's the case anymore, is it?
Oh no, goodness, no. It takes me about like per costume. Yeah, per costume. If I'm spending more than a couple months on it, that means I'm spending too long on it.
Sorry, I want to make sure that
and it's really something that people like. You self-diagnose yourself sometimes as whether you take it seriously enough to consider yourself a professional.
It's hard. It's hard.
It is.
And then imposter syndrome lately is
I mean, it's one of those things where, like, you know, again, I started off doing this, 6 years ago, where I was literally just kind of goofing off and just posting pictures. So I think it's hard to determine, like, at what point was that line crossed of like, oh,
I feel like it's more self-acceptance. That's really it.
Well, it's something I was going to say is we all start the way you literally just described, where we start making stuff for fun, posting pictures, and then for some people it develops into something more.
Crap, it's real.
I wanted
like this contest.
There was a topic we just talked about right before this, which was about you getting kind of singled out, and there's lots of positive comments and interactivity between you and your followers and fans and people that you inspire, which is terrific. That's the whole point of why we share what we share. But there are situations where all of us get kind of singled out in certain situations, and one of the things I really wanted to point out for the brand of what the Ultimate Cosplay Championship or podcast or whatever we choose to do is to kind of give ourselves a team, a collection of people that we can rely on each other, not just as judges and coordinators and committee members, but for the community and the competitors and the viewers to showcase and really be a beacon of positivity throughout the community. And we're able to do that in a virtual setting, and at some point we'll be able to do it at a in-person setting at conventions and things like that. We've got a lot of great goals to really show people that we're real people. We do this because we love it, and we will not accept unacceptable behavior or toxic behavior, period. And it's really great to be transparent like we're able to in this podcast, to show people like, hey, like, if you want to take it that seriously and be a dickhead, that's fine, but no one's going to want to hang out with you. But we really want this. So something I wanted to say to you, this is your first year judging with us. You're part of our official committee. And this isn't just like a show up, you get your paycheck and you're gone type of thing. Like, we want you to be part of our family, our committee, our decision making for as long as this continues to go on in some capacity, if you choose to.
Yeah. So, no, from the jump, this seemed awesome. And I don't know if I mentioned this because we had a phone call last week, but what I was going to say was, I would be doing this if there wasn't any pay involved. Like, that's not the reason why I'm participating. Like, if this was a thing, it's like, hey, we just need you to dedicate some time, I would do it, because I really just love being part of the community, and I love doing stuff like this. So,
that's cool. Something that's funny is that every person we asked to be a judge, we didn't even mention that we would like to pay everyone, and every single person said yes, including you. Because maybe it's because of the reputation of what we did last year, or just the principles in which we want to continue this. But that's very generous for you to share your time, your expertise, your knowledge, your community, your passion with this event. And yes, it is a contest, and I keep referencing this, but this is a celebration of artists to showcase their work and explore the world of costumers from around the world. And I need to ask, because it's like exactly 1 o'clock where you are right now. How much more time can you give us?
I could give a little bit more time. My husband's not yelling for me yet. When he starts me, I'm like, "Hey, she should ask me. We need to go. It should be fine." So I think he's running late. So I got at least 15 more minutes.
Okay.
I
Well,
should be fine.
let's
Yeah.
ask you. Do you have any questions for us?
Oh goodness, I feel like
I like giving people that option.
Of course.
I feel weird because I don't want to ask anything that other people already know about y'all or have seen in
No, please.
your
Well, yeah, but
previous
Go for it.
podcasts or
this is a
anything.
question that you have
Right.
personally. The chat doesn't exist. We actually just stopped streaming, so we didn't. By the way,
It's like I'm pretty sure it's still there. Okay, so if you don't mind, these are going to be two separate questions for each of you. So first for Chris, I guess I just wanted to ask. So I know you know, real job. You also work for TNT Cosplay, correct?
Correct.
So like, what got you like there? Like, did you start off working like just in general in the scene for like cosplay, like supplies and stuff, and then you're like, oh, I like this thing, or like how did that work?
I'm going to be okay. I'll try to make this as short of a story because I know time is limited, but it's a really beautiful story of how I ended up working there. And simply put, I saw one of Evil Ted and Bill Duran's videos on YouTube about 6 years ago. They were like, that's what got me excited about making costumes. I didn't think I could work with foam, so I bought a sewing machine and taught myself how to sew costumes. About a year after I started streaming on Twitch Creative of just myself making fabric costumes, leather, taking commissions of clothing, men's clothing specifically. And I did my first competition for TwitchCon when Hoku shattered my my Assassin's Creed costume. So anyway, throughout that time, I got a host or a raid from a friend of mine, and one of the viewers that came in, their username was TNT Cosplay Supply, and this is a very kind of emotional thing. So I'm not trying to jerk tears from eyes, but my boss at TNT had a son named Christopher who passed away due to a diabetes-related complication in his sleep. And a year after he passed away, she started TNT Cosplay Supply in honor of her son, who was a cosplayer that had passed away.
Oh, wow.
And about a year after she started TNT Cosplay Supply, she ended up in my channel. And I am the same age as her son, with the same first name. And I was making something that he once made, and she came into my channel and said, "This is unbelievable. I feel like I'm watching my son on Twitch right now." And she watched me every day for years. And eventually I moved to Austin, and she paid for me to come up to a con to meet her and to meet Evil Ted and to meet some other costumers. And we had this really great friendship that formed. And I was in a situation where I needed to kind of change jobs. And I called her and I said, "Would you be willing to offer me a job? I'd love to work with you." And she said, "Nothing would make me more happy than for you to join our family." Because TNT is a family-owned, privately owned company. So I joined their team as the director, operations manager. And I said, "I don't want to do that. I want to do marketing. I want to shoot videos. I want to do podcasts. I want to do events. I want to go to cons." And she said, "Okay, that's your job." And her and I's relationship has been a very powerful and beautiful thing for me since we've met as friends and as colleagues. So that is how I ended up at TNT. But cosplay
So sweet.
has always been a big part of my creative process, and I never worked with foam. And I just one more short, brief story. I wanted to prove to my boss that I could work with foam, so I made my first ever foam armor build. last year or 2019, I was a finalist in TwitchCon and special effects with it, but I didn't know how to work with foam, plastizote, lighting, fog machines, airbrushing, casting, and molding. I learned all of these skills just to prove to her I can do this. I got in as a finalist and I asked her to be my handler. And that was a big moment for me to prove to her. And the truth is, if it weren't for her son, who I never got the privilege of meeting, she would never have started that company. I would never have met her. I would never have been brought into this company. I would never have started working with foam potentially. And I wouldn't have had the privilege of bringing her as my handler to a convention. So it's a really special thing for me. It's not just like, I love costumes and that's it. There's so much more to it. And I could go at length, but I think hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And that was
so
a way more beautiful story than I expected.
Well, thank you. And anyway, I'll end there and
Let's
let
just
you ask Hoku whatever you were wanting to ask.
All right.
Okay, so I like asking pretty much everyone this when I talk to them if they do cosplay. So, and you've made some really, really awesome stuff, Hoku. So I gotta ask, what's your like your baby, like the favorite thing, yeah.
Oh, wow, that's a good question.
Proper costume.
I'm gonna say prop. Like specific thing.
Can we do both? Can we say both?
Yeah, we can do both because it'll give you more range.
Book, aren't you?
Yeah. So I made this. Let's see. Okay, I'm not gonna get it.
He's wired to his computer. Yeah.
Yeah. So my favorite prop I ever made was Uther Lightbringer's Libra. Zach Fisher and I collaborated on a project a few years back when I was judging TwitchCon. And we did kind of a revived version of Uther. And so the book's got almost like this shattered effect on the surface of it. I'll toss a link in chat after I finish answering the question. But it's got lighting and the light actually bursts through the surface of the book. So imagine like a book where it's just containing light and then the surface is just cracked and those light fixtures are allowing that light to emit through it. We made a book like that and it's super, super cool.
It really is.
And then my favorite costume, that's a hard one because I put everything I have into my costumes. Like literally Zach has told me that I am probably the only person on the planet too extra for his designs. I really probably like my Uther costume more than the Lich King costume.
Wow.
The reason I say that, the Lich King costume was executed in like, I'm so happy with how it turned out. But I like my face being visible. I like being a person, not a statue. And that's one of the things I struggle with whenever you've got, a full face mask or a helmet on you. You kind of get pushed in this position of being more of a statue. My Reinhardt costume, the reason I picked Lionheart was actually because his face was visible. And so for me, people's personalities are so important, and a lot of that is the interaction with somebody and viewing their face and their facial reactions and whatnot. Especially for me with my disability, is I read into a lot of cues because I've got of course no left eye, and then I'm very, very much like almost deaf in my left ear. So people's reactions are really important. But yeah, so I would say I love Lionheart, but that costume had its own set of problems. I'm glad people didn't see them. And then Uther would definitely probably be my favorite. Then again, Cable's also fun, and so is Trevor Belmont from Castlevania. And yeah, I could go on.
So to say you have a lot of amazing work. I mean, specifically because I love your Lionheart. Like I know you say there's problems, but like
it checked all the boxes. And a lot of fun. That costume. I wore it once. For the last time I wore it, we had it on for almost 10 hours one day.
Oh, that's a long time to be in any costume.
And that was with 2 breaks. But the moment you get in that costume, it's so interesting to be so high at a convention and be able to see everyone. I know what it's like to be Chris and be a giant. And just be able to okay, you'll understand this. How tall are you? You're like what, 5'7", 5'8"?
I'm 5'9",
Oh,
barefoot.
5'9".
Okay.
So normally I'm
you-
wearing heels.
And then
So
you
I'm
put heels
usually
on,
around
and then
6'1".
Okay, there you go.
So you cheat as well then. But I'm only 5'10" in normal shoes. And so when
As
you
if that's short. That's not short.
it's not short, but it doesn't change the fact that when I go to a concert, I can't see over people, right? Like I'm still right there before it's like, oh man, wouldn't it be cool, right? But when you're in Lionheart, you're able to just see the masses and talk to people. And like, it was so fun being able, because I'm 7'4" in that costume, and we made
Oh, wow.
full puppet arms. So I can actually get my arm above my head and wave to people. So like, there's nothing funner. Prejudging at TwitchCon in 2016, there's a video actually that Holly Conrad posted where she has footage from that, but it shows me walking in and I'm in Lionheart and I'm just like, hello, welcome, I am Hoku Props, right? And I was just having fun with it because it was like, once again, this is that whole contest, like feeling good about your costume and being excited about sharing that with people. I can't stress it enough, guys. If you're competing, get excited about the competition. Don't get like tense and anxious about it, because the hard work is done. You've made the costume. Now you just have to wear it, talk about it, and then walk on stage for like a minute, And so for me, it's just like, man, those are kind of the things that check the boxes. But yeah, sorry, that went on a tangent. Once again, that's how I work.
No, that's totally fine. Again, it's one of those things where it's like when you're passionate about something and like you talk about it, we feel it too. So no, I much enjoy it. I'm kind of like you. I don't when it comes to costumes with masks and stuff, I don't do them. Like I just straight up just don't do them. I feel like having that connection with your face and being able to look at people and stuff, it's kind of important, and I like it. I don't like, because I feel like when you cover yourself up though, it's like I could be anyone.
Right.
I want y'all to know.
I've done it a couple of times, and you just get a different reaction from the public or the community where especially if you add a lot of realism, people will legitimately be afraid of you if you're wearing a mask. And if your face is exposed, like, you're a lot more approachable.
Yeah.
And as we're kind of, I know we're getting close to time here, but I wanted to ask you, and you be as forthcoming as you want, but a lot of artists, and I'm not talking about just like imposter syndrome, because that essentially applies to all of us, including myself as the host of the show and our judges and our competitors and all that stuff. But is there anything else that you've had to overcome personally? Like for example, I'm a recovering alcoholic. I've been through chronic depression, anxiety, trauma, PTSD, things like that I've had to live with and learn how to cope with, to overcome certain obstacles in my life just to exist, let alone pursue my creative, expressions and stuff. So is there anything that is very human of you that you've had to have gone through and kind of overcome to pursue what you do in your career and as a cosplayer?
Specifically with cosplay, like, and people are always surprised, but I am a very like socially awkward person. Like I have like for real social anxiety. I consider myself bad with people in general. I am the type of person that I stay at home. I don't party. I don't do that kind of stuff. I'm really bad with crowds. And so it's hard because with cosplay, obviously you go to cons and stuff, and like obviously I'm posting online and things like that. So people are like, what do you mean you have like social anxiety and confidence issues and all that kind of stuff? And cosplay is one of those things where if I wasn't doing it, I would probably be a hermit.
Right.
To be honest, like I don't know. When I'm wearing a costume, at least I feel like, especially at cons and stuff, when people are coming to talk to you, it's for a specific reason. And so when I mentally like know that reason, I have things to talk about, so I don't feel as uncomfortable. But normally I'm a very, very uncomfortable individual in general. So,
and that's, I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people, that are watching the show when we do our live show, or people who are interested in getting into costumes or cosplay, are going to be able to identify with you. And by the way, you're not the only judge on our committee that would say exactly what you just said. So it's really important for people to identify extremely normal and otherwise common, personal afflictions like that, because they can identify it and feel more connected to you as a friend or as a human rather than just, a superstar or a model or an influencer or whatever the hell you want to call yourself. Because the fact is, like we talked about earlier, we're all just people and we struggle with the same social anxieties, personal issues, taxes, money, like all that stuff. Like that applies to all of us. So for us to be able to have you on our show and have you express that, like that's very important to me, that everyone understands that we're all just people. And we've got some big names, on our judging panel, and you're one of them, by the way, that we want to be able to kind of normalize that for everyone and show everyone that we're no different than anyone who's competing or watching or viewing at all. So thank you very much for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem. And I think what's cool too is when I did the Marvel documentary specifically, I think a lot of people also, they said the same thing. They're just like, oh, it's just like you and your husband, like just, being cute and stuff. Like you seem really quiet. And I'm like, yeah, because I am.
Right.
Just see pictures of me, so you don't understand. Like I am not this like huge personality. It's not. No. I try my best, but
I also appreciate what you said about there is something unique that happens to cosplayers when they're in costume, where it allows us to kind of tap into almost the character we're cosplaying as and draw from their personality or their courage to be more than we really are sometimes. And I certainly get that, because
it's a confidence boost.
Yeah, like I'm people don't believe me when I say this, but I'm just like you. Like I never leave my house. I don't party. I don't really go out unless I go to a con. And then I'm around people that are like me, that I can feel safe and comfortable enjoying my time with. I think Hoku would say something similar as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of my social outlet. And we've been kind of cut off from that for the last year, obviously. But yeah, so anyway, it's really powerful for all of us artists to be able to share things like that and have people understand that, because so many people identify.
Yeah, I think so too. So I appreciate stuff like this, because I really, like I said, enjoy talking to other like cosplayers and people who just, craft and make things, and just, like-minded people. It makes it easier.
Yep.
It makes it a lot easier. So yeah.
Do you have any last things that you want to talk about that's coming up in your future? Any costumes you're working on, or just announcements?
General announcements. Currently, no. I am. It's going to be a long build. I'm currently starting a gold Wonder Woman cosplay.
Oh, cool.
Not exactly the one from the movie, but very similar. I'm making a few changes because that's what I do. I make changes where I see fit. So this is going to be a long project. So I'll be working on that this year. And that's pretty much it. Just kind of hanging out, trying the whole TikTok thing, trying to be more socially active, I guess. If y'all haven't seen the Marvel 616 series on Disney Plus, I'm in episode 5. Y'all can check that out. I talk a little bit.
That's cool.
About stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's kind of it. That's all I have.
As an added question, besides just costume related things, do you have any other goals that you're pursuing or interested in pursuing, as a cosplayer or in your career? Like would you ever want to write a book or do tutorials or do educational content for do you have anything else that you've always wanted to do that you haven't yet done?
I would like to be able to do more tutorial content. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to do. If I end up doing it, I realize that YouTube is a lot for me. I don't think I have the, not capability, but just the time or energy to make something fully polished as YouTube videos, but I did want to start doing like little mini tutorials. So like, for instance, recently I posted again on TikTok, just kind of a short, like it can fit within a minute. And it's like, this is how I made like my Ahsoka headpiece, right? Yeah. Like this is literally from like a beginning to end. Yeah. It's literally just me taking pictures throughout and explaining, but people were saying it was really helpful and helped them. So I want to do more stuff like that. Cause I normally don't.
I love on TikTok when people do like the magic swipe and you go from like bolt of fabric to completely cut out pattern. And you're like, it's that easy.
And then a bunch of foam and they throw it at it and it turns into feathers or whatever. Yeah. And that whole thing.
Like if only just any transformation thing where it's just like, I'm a normal person. Now I'm in full body paint and cosplay. Ignore the fact that this took 4 hours to put on. It's fine.
Anyway, Poku, as the host, you know, how would you like to wrap up this
guys
podcast?
Thank you so much for being a part of the podcast. Jasmine, thank you for joining us as well. We had a wonderful time talking to you and kind of getting into your head. I did want to say something that somebody in chat said that I thought was really meaningful. Smelm said, I am so excited to see you, Jasmine, on the panel after hearing so much from you. And I think that's a perfect example as to why we're doing the podcast. Is we want to give people not just an insight into how we're planning on running the contest, but also an insight into the individuals involved in it. It's very important to me. So once again, thank you for being a part of it. And guys, if you have questions for Jasmine, please feel free to reach out to her social media, and I'm sure she will get back to you if and when she can.
Yes.
And then, that's all I've got. Thank you and goodbye.
Such a jarring goodbye, but Jasmine, it's been a pleasure, you know, getting to know you, you know, before the podcast, and thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for being our first guest on the show. For anyone that doesn't know, we will have all of these podcasts archived, and we are going to be doing a lot of work to get this out there in public so that people can see and get to know all of the judges and people involved. So I will say my farewells, and you guys can say yours.
Yeah, thanks guys so much. I was happy to be part of this. So this has been awesome.
Well, maybe we'll get you back on here someday in like a year.
I mean, totally.
We could do a thing. We could do a thing after the show where we interview maybe a few judges at a time and say, how was it for you? Or I don't know. We'll explore that when we get there.
Yeah. All right. I'll totally come back.
Cool.
Podcast over.